Something just broke open in the Middle East, and nobody is calling it what it actually is. Right now, while American officials are going on television claiming total victory over Iran, the Iranian national security apparatus is broadcasting a very different message to the world, not whispered through back channels, not leaked to sympathetic journalists out loud on the record, in translated statements that the American press is almost entirely ignoring. That gap between what Washington is saying and what Tehran is saying is where the real story lives. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through every single piece of it, because what is unfolding right now is not a victory lap. It is the beginning of something far more dangerous than the war itself. If you're not subscribed to Daily Brief yet, do it now. Hit that button. Because what I'm about to lay out for you, the statements, the strikes, the economic fallout, the threats, this is the kind of analysis you will not find assembled anywhere else in one place. We do the work so you don't have to. Let's go back, not 72 hours, further. Let's go back to the logic that started all of this. The Trump administration entered this conflict with a theory. The theory was simple: deliver a catastrophic blow early, decimate Iran's leadership, collapse the government's morale, and watch the Islamic Republic implode from within. It was the Venezuela playbook: fast, decisive, over before anyone could organize a coherent response. According to reporting from multiple intelligence analysts cited in the Washington Post, the strategy relied heavily on the assumption that targeted elimination of senior figures would create a leadership vacuum that could not be filled quickly enough to sustain a coordinated military response. That assumption was wrong. Here is what actually happened. The top leadership of Iran was not decimated. The Ayatollah was not killed. The governmental structure was not disrupted beyond recovery. And now, from the highest levels of the Iranian state, the message coming back to Washington is the opposite of surrender. This is not Iranian spin. This is not propaganda I'm endorsing. I'm showing you exactly what is being said, by whom, and why it matters, because you are not hearing it assembled this way on American television. Announcement number one: Iran's foreign minister issued a formal statement directly contradicting the White House's characterization of the conflict status. Foreign Minister Araghchi, and I want to be precise here because the exact wording matters, stated publicly that Iranian President Pezeshkian's expressed openness to de-escalation within the region, contingent on neighboring countries not allowing their airspace, territory, or waters to be used to attack Iran, was, in his words, almost immediately killed by President Trump's misinterpretation of our capabilities, determination, and intent. Read that again. Iran's foreign minister said that Iran had extended an opening, a conditional opening, yes, but an opening, and that the Trump administration's response destroyed it within hours. The statement continued: if Mr. Trump seeks escalation, it is precisely what our powerful armed forces have long been prepared for and what he will get. Responsibility for any intensification of Iran's exercise of self-defense will lie squarely with the U.S. administration. Then came the number that the American financial press should be screaming about, and largely is not. The foreign minister said directly that Trump's week-long military campaign had already cost the U.S. military $100 billion, not counting the economic damage to follow when markets reopen. His exact framing: that cost will balloon and directly be transferred to ordinary Americans at pumping stations. $100 billion in under 2 weeks. And gas prices are already moving. That's announcement number one, received. Now here is where it gets worse. Announcement number two: Iran's National Security Council head, Ali Larijani, gave a televised interview, translated and verified, in which he laid out in explicit terms what Iran intends to do next. Larijani did not speak in diplomatic abstractions. He said, "We're not going to let Donald Trump off the hook. He must pay the price. He martyred our leader and our people. More than 1,000 civilians have already been killed. We will not let it go until we retaliate in kind." Stop there. 1,000 civilians. That number, consistent across multiple sources, including satellite imagery and congressional intelligence briefings, includes what happened in Manab, where an elementary school was struck by the U.S. military, killing approximately 150 children. That event is not disputed by the intelligence community. It is being briefed to members of Congress. It happened. Larijani went further in his interview. He described the American strategic miscalculation in precise terms. He said the U.S. plan had 2 stages. First, kill enough Iranian leadership to collapse the governmental structure. Second, watch the population turn against the Islamic Republic. Americans thought this would be done very quickly, he said. Their strategy was to end the war fiercely, but in a short time. But they didn't think Iranians wouldn't let them go. Now they are desperate. What Larijani is describing is not bravado. It is a strategic analysis that is, at minimum, internally consistent with the facts on the ground. The Islamic Republic has not collapsed. The population has not risen up. According to analysis from multiple regional observers cited in Reuters and Al Jazeera, the U.S. strikes have instead generated a wave of nationalist unity inside Iran that has, paradoxically, strengthened the government's domestic position, including among segments of the population who were previously critical of the regime. Trump went in to liberate the Iranian people. He ended up rallying them behind the government he was trying to destroy. That's announcement number 2, received. If you're watching this and it's making sense, if you feel like this is the analysis that's been missing, subscribe to Daily Brief and turn on notifications. We are covering this story every single day in real time with the sourcing you need to actually understand what is happening. Announcement number 3. And this one, nobody is connecting to everything else. The Strait of Hormuz is functionally closed. 20% of the world's crude oil supply moves through that narrow waterway. Right now, it is not moving. Kuwait's state oil company, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, OPEC's 5th largest producer, has announced precautionary reductions to oil and refinery output because it cannot export. Qatar has shut down oil production. 2 fuel depots at Kuwait International Airport were struck by Iranian drone attacks, causing, according to eyewitness accounts and video verified by multiple outlets, massive fires across the facility. And now here is what the Trump administration's response has been: naval escorts for oil tankers. The Iranian military's response to that proposal came from the Khatam al-Anbiya Air Defense Headquarters. The spokesperson said, and I'm translating directly, "We welcome the United States escorting oil tankers through the strait. Iranian forces are waiting for the Americans. Entry may be on the surface, but the end will be at the bottom of the Persian Sea." So the strait is closed. The U.S. is proposing naval escorts. Iran is saying we will sink them. And in the background, Donald Trump has quietly removed sanctions on Russian oil, allowing Moscow to flood markets in India with discounted crude in what appears to be a desperate move to bring down global prices before the midterm political fallout becomes unmanageable. It is not working. Gas prices are rising anyway. That's announcement number 3, received. Now let's talk about what is actually happening inside the region, the part that gets lost when American coverage focuses only on the U.S.-Iran binary. The Trump administration went into this conflict assuming it could contain the blast radius. That assumption has failed completely. Iran's response strategy, as it has become clearer over the past several days, is not to match the U.S. strike for strike inside Iranian territory. It is to export instability across the entire Gulf. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard has struck a skyscraper near Dubai. They have struck a social security building in Kuwait City. They struck the fuel depots at Kuwait International Airport. And in a move that drew almost no coverage in the American press, the U.S. military destroyed Iran's naval vessel, the Dana, using a torpedo as the ship departed Sri Lanka, where it had been participating in a naval parade as a guest of the Indian government, unarmed by agreement. The Sri Lankan Navy rescued approximately 30 surviving crew members. The United States did not render aid. These are not isolated incidents. They are a deliberate Iranian strategy to make every Gulf state feel the consequences of hosting American military operations. The foreign minister's earlier statement to neighboring countries was explicit. Stop allowing U.S. forces to use your airspace and territory, and we will stop striking you. Continue, and you are a target. The result? Qatar's emir met with Trump, not out of solidarity, but out of panic. Because Doha has spent 20 years and hundreds of billions of dollars constructing an image of itself as a safe, modern, investment-friendly city-state. That image is now in ruins, literally and figuratively, every time an Iranian drone appears over the Gulf skyline. You want to understand what Trump actually did to the Gulf monarchs who spent years cultivating his favor, hosting his visits, buying his buildings, donating to his inaugural funds? He took their money and then started a war that is burning down everything they built. As reported by Bloomberg, Qatar alone has committed hundreds of billions in U.S. investment deals, and now their airports are under fire. And inside Iraq, where the United States still has troops stationed, the parliament is chanting "Death to America" on the floor of the legislature. The sectarian fault lines that were barely being held together, Shia, Sunni, Kurdish, are fracturing again in real time. The Trump administration did not just restart a war, it destabilized the entire regional architecture simultaneously. Here is something that deserves particular attention. The foreign minister's statement referenced a document produced by Trump's own National Intelligence Council, representing input from all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, which reportedly concluded that war with Iran is destined to fail. That document existed before the strikes began. Araghchi asked directly in his statement, were these warnings conveyed? That question is not rhetorical. It is a public record challenge to the American intelligence and policymaking apparatus. It is saying your own analysts told you this would not work. Someone chose not to listen or chose to ignore it. Meanwhile, on the American side, officials are going on television saying the United States intends to seize all of Iran's oil reserves. The quote from a senior U.S. official on state media, "This is a long-term gain because what we want to do is get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. Ultimately, we're not going to have to worry about the issues in the Strait of Hormuz because we're going to get all of the oil out of the hands of terrorists. Seize Iranian oil." That's the plan being discussed publicly on American television. Let that land for a second. The United States military does not currently control Iranian territory. The Iranian government has not collapsed. The Iranian military has not surrendered. The strait is closed. $100 billion has already been spent. Civilian infrastructure, desalination plants, oil refineries, and elementary school has been struck. And the public-facing plan is, we'll seize their oil. This is what the credibility collapse looks like in real time. Not a dramatic single moment. A slow accumulation of statements that no longer connect to reality. Now, what does this mean for you? If you're filling up your tank this week, you already know the answer. Oil prices are climbing. The Strait of Hormuz closure is not theoretical. The market was already pricing in a risk premium on crude before the latest escalation. According to analysis from Goldman Sachs cited in the Financial Times, every week the strait remains restricted adds estimated pressure on global oil prices in the range of several dollars per barrel. Pressure that moves directly and immediately into gasoline prices at the pump. If you have a retirement account, watch it. The energy sector is volatile in both directions right now. Some producers benefit from high prices, others are exposed to supply chain disruption. The broader market has not fully priced in a prolonged conflict with no clear exit path, because as of this recording, the official American position is still that this will end quickly. When that assumption is revised, and it will be, the repricing will be fast. If you live in a state where energy jobs are concentrated, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, the short-term picture looks like a windfall. Higher crude prices mean more drilling revenue, but the long-term instability in Gulf shipping lanes affects refinery inputs, LNG export capacity, and the entire downstream supply chain in ways that are not yet fully visible. And if you have any exposure to defense contractors, Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop, the $100 billion number the Iranian foreign minister cited, if even partially accurate, tells you something about the pace of military expenditure happening right now. None of this is abstract. It is already in motion. The question is how far it goes. I see two paths from here. There is no middle road, not anymore. Path 1, a back-channel deal emerges. The Omani mediation track, which has historically been the quietest and most productive channel between Washington and Tehran, produces a framework. Iran agrees to a cessation of strikes on Gulf infrastructure. The U.S. agrees to pause strikes on Iranian civilian infrastructure. The strait reopens partially. Oil prices stabilize. Both sides declare victory to their domestic audiences and begin the slow, grinding process of negotiating from there. This path requires the Trump administration to accept something less than full Iranian capitulation, which means accepting something that contradicts what the president has already said publicly. That is a significant political obstacle, but it is not impossible. Pragmatism has a way of appearing when the financial cost becomes undeniable. Path 2. The spiral. Iran strikes U.S. naval assets in the Persian Gulf, either directly or through proxy. The U.S. retaliates against Iranian military command infrastructure. One of the Gulf states experiences a strike large enough to trigger a formal military response. The Iraqi parliament's rhetoric becomes Iraqi militia action. The Houthis, the Lebanese groups, the Iraqi factions, the entire axis activates simultaneously. The strait closes completely. Oil hits levels that begin to structurally damage the global economy. And the United States finds itself in the kind of multi-front, open-ended Middle Eastern war that a majority of American voters, by every available polling measure, went to the ballot box in 2024 specifically to avoid. The foreign minister said it plainly. The American people voted to end involvement in costly quagmires in the Middle East. Instead, they ended up with an administration that Netanyahu, after decades of failed attempts, finally managed to dupe into fighting Israel's wars. Is that true? Is it spin? Is it somewhere in between? That's for you to decide. But what is not spin is the $100 billion. What is not spin is the closed strait. What is not spin is the elementary school in Manab. What is not spin is death to America on the floor of the Iraqi parliament. Those are facts, and they point in one direction. Here is what I know for certain. Every assumption the Trump administration made at the start of this campaign has been tested against reality, and every single one has come up short. The government didn't collapse. The population didn't revolt. The leadership wasn't decimated. The war didn't end in days. The oil prices didn't come down. The neighboring states aren't holding. And the Iranian state, whatever its many flaws, has demonstrated that it is capable of sustaining a military response while simultaneously mounting an effective regional destabilization campaign. That's not a victory. That's not even a stalemate. That is an unfolding strategic failure being managed in real time through a fog of competing official statements, none of which agree with each other. We've seen this before, not at this scale, not with these stakes, but we've seen what happens when a military campaign built on faulty assumptions meets a determined adversary with nothing left to lose. The outcomes are never clean, they are never fast, and the people who pay the price are almost never the ones who made the decisions. 3 questions I want to leave you with. Think about them. Come back to them in a week. Is Trump ending a threat or creating conditions for a generation of new ones? When the financial bill for this war arrives, and it will arrive at the pump, in your portfolio, in the federal deficit, who will be held accountable for it, and the one that keeps me up at night? If Iran's own foreign minister is accurately describing a $100 billion cost, a closed strait, and a war that the U.S. intelligence community said was destined to fail, what was the actual plan? Leave your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Hit like if this gave you something the mainstream coverage isn't giving you. Subscribe to Daily Brief if you want to stay ahead of this story as it develops. Turn on notifications because this is moving fast and the next development could come within hours. We'll be here every day, every development, no spin, just the full picture.